Today's topic will be on Meet the Nexus 1000V family, the secret of Unity. In this session, our expert, Vishal Mehta, will go through deployment phases for enabling ICF. Be sure to register for Part 3 in this Nexus 1000V Deep Dive Series webcast titled Game Changers, Silver Lining in the Cloud, where Vishal will continue to discuss the topic in more detail. You can register for this in the third webcast by clicking the link in the chat window, and be sure to look for other webcasts coming soon via the Cisco support community by visiting the Events Corner knowledge sharing page. And on March 17th, we have a webcast on demystifying Unified Computing System, UCS, interfaces for troubleshooting. Learn more about this event by visiting the Expert Corner knowledge sharing page or by using the link in the chat window. And now let's take a moment to review some upcoming events which might be of interest to you. We'll be running an Ask the Experts now through February 27th, featuring Cisco Email Security Appliance, Web Security Appliance, and Content Security Management Appliance. So you can find these and more by visiting the Expert Corner knowledge sharing page. And then after the presentation, come back and visit the topics under the knowledge sharing corner. On each event the Cisco support community presents, you will find links to FAQs, videos, presentation downloads, and discussions. You can take a moment to rate the content of your peers' documents, videos, and blogs, and in doing so, you help us recognize the wonderful content that they contribute, and ratings do encourage contribution. And if you haven't already, then be sure to join the Cisco support community where you can share current, real-world technical support knowledge with your peers and experts. You can also participate in live interactive events like today. Check out the Class of 2015 event top contributors and spotlight awardees on the Cisco support community. And if you're interested in conducting an event for us and becoming a top event contributor yourself, please go to the Experts Bureau and sign up. Our expert joining us today is Vishal Mehta. Vishal is a technical marketing engineer with Cisco's Data Center Competitive Insights team based in San Jose, California. Previously, he was working as the customer support engineer for Cisco's Data Center Server Virtualization Technical Assistance Center, TAC, team for the past 4 years with a primary focus on data center technologies such as Cisco Nexus 5000, Cisco UCS, Cisco Nexus 1000V, and virtualization. He presented at Cisco Live in Orlando 2013, Milan in 2014, and San Francisco in 2014. He holds a master's degree from Rutgers University in Electrical and Computer Engineering and has CCIE certification 37139 in Routing, Switching, Service Provider, and Data Center. Welcome, Vishal. Joining Vishal today is Nexus 1000V subject matter expert Gunjan Patel. Gunjan is a former TAC engineer in the San Jose server virtualization team with a primary focus on Cisco Nexus 1000V and virtualization for 3 years and presented at Cisco Live Milan 2014. Gunjan holds a BS degree in electrical engineering from Northwestern Polytechnic University and is currently working on achieving his MS degree in computer science and engineering at Santa Clara University. If you would like a copy of the presentation slides, click the PDF file link in the chat window. And Vishal will be continuing the discussion in an Ask the Expert event, now through February 27th. So if you have more questions, please visit the Knowledge Center on the Cisco support community or reference the link in the chat window. Now, I'd like to briefly outline today's format for the event. Vishal will start with his presentation and demo for the next 60 minutes of the program, and then he'll dive into the live question submissions for the remainder of today's event. During our live presentation, you may submit questions to be answered by Vishal and the team of Cisco technical experts using the Q&A box on the right-hand side of your console. So please begin posting your questions now to give them the best chance of answering them. And we'll be asking polling questions during this webcast, and we highly encourage you to participate by answering them. So please take a moment when the webcast ends and you close your event to take the survey and let Vishal and us know how you rate this event. Now let's get started with today's event. We're going to start with a polling question for the audience. How do you provide security to virtual workloads? A, you rely on physical security devices. B, you're using a mix of physical and virtual security applications, or C, you are using virtual security. So take a moment to answer that, as that will give Vishal an opportunity to tailor his presentation to meet your needs today. And make sure to submit your questions, as we'll answer them a little later in today's webcast. And now I would like to hand the mic over to our expert, Vishal, who will start his presentation.
Hello. Hello. Hope your day is going good. I'm going to talk about continuing our session on Nexus 1000V on how it uses a vPath technology to further enhance the services from layer 3 to layer 7. And today's agenda is going to be on vPath, which is the Cisco proprietary technology which connects Nexus 1000V with other services such as VSG, ASA, CSR, NetScaler Load Balancer, vNAM, vWAAS, and what are the common deployment scenarios that we see today in customer networks. I'll be also talking about vWAAS container solution, which Cisco has come up with in the past few months, about connecting all these services together in a single container. We also came up with the Prime NSC, which was the old legacy vNMNC enhancement to support more workloads and large number of other services and hypervisors. So with that, let's get started. First, I will review what we did, a quick refresher from last week. We talked about Nexus 1000V, how it has conquered all the hypervisors in the market, VMware, Hyper-V, and Linux KVM for OpenStack. The deployment strategy is the same, and it provides layer 2 to layer 3 services just by itself by syncing with the virtual managers such as vCenter, SCVMM, and OpenStack controller. We also discussed about VXLAN strategy, how it has evolved from 1.5 version to 3.0 version, and now currently we support and we provide VXLAN gateway as a virtual machine. And in today's session, we are going to talk about these different components which helps Nexus 1000V use vPath to provide different cloud network services. No matter which hypervisor, storage, switch, or controller you have, with the vPath technology, we can provide the same services across. So let's get started with the vPath. vPath is, as I mentioned, is a Cisco proprietary technology that was created to integrate the virtualized services with Nexus 1000V so that any packets arriving to 1000V from virtual machine can be further classified, conditioned, and redirected to a specific service as needed for the operation. It could be, it needs more security, it might need a load balancing, and it might need to get routed. All those services are now provided on a vanilla Nexus 1000V flavor using a vPath on the Nexus 1000V architecture. Since the VMs are always tied to a port profile, no matter where your VM is, whether it's on a server A or server B and data center A or data center B, since it's tied to a port profile, wherever the virtual machine moves, the port profile will be still tied to it and it will get the same services. Prime NSC, it's not a new tool that we came up with. It was a vNMC which was working with the VSG and ASA. And what we did is we enhanced the Prime Network Services controller to support growing services, cloud platforms, and different hypervisors. So with the new PNSC, now we support Hyper-V and OpenStack as well as KVM. We support more virtual services, third-party services, and it can integrate with Amazon, Microsoft Azure, as well as Cisco-provided cloud services. It also has an outbound API so that it can be used and leveraged by other third-party tools which can program the PNSC as needed. PNSC, the way it works is, since we are growing in virtual platform, we are coming up with the new services, VSG, ASA, CSR, and third-party tools. It becomes a big challenge to manage all the virtual nodes through a command line. And that's where the PNSC came in. It integrates with your virtual manager, which could be Hyper-V or VMware or vCenter. It integrates with Nexus 1000V, and then it also integrates with the third-party tools. It also integrates with the third-party services or Cisco services like VSG, ASA. Through PNSC, you can make sure that your security and your device profiles are in compliance. It makes sure that it pulls the correct data from the 1000V and posts it to those virtual nodes. And also it helps you to manage and configure those virtual nodes in a rapid manner. So if you're bringing up 10 tenants and you need to have them a unique profile, through click of buttons on PNSC, you can deploy them in a secured, containerized way. The look and the feel of vNMC has changed in the new PNSC. Here you can see that there are different device configurations, service profiles for your different tenants. You have resource management. You can connect to the intercloud management for ICF, Amazon, and more services can be now integrated to PNSC. Different components. There are different components which PNSC works with. One being the resource manager, which is your VMware vCenter, Intercloud, ASA, VSM. It integrates with them to control them. Also, PNSC is only in the management and the control plane. It is not part of a data plane. So any policies or configuration will be pushed from PNSC through the management interface, but it won't actually participate in the traffic of the virtual machines. It connects to the VM manager like vCenter. It also connects now to the Hyper-V. The other components are, it provides a GUI and API for orchestration. It provides the policy agent, which is the key component that makes VSM to talk with other solutions. The policy agent on VSG and on Nexus 1000V are different. They communicate through PNSC to achieve the same goals. This is the overview on logical overview of which internal components of PNSC talks with which components of the other partners of PNSC, such as vCenter, VSM, VSG, and hypervisor. So anything vNMC or PNSC will take the VM attributes from the virtual manager, configure the table for those VM virtual machines. It will pull the information from VSM for those VM's port profiles, VM IP learning, and based on what you configure on PNSC, that will be pushed to the VSG using the policy agent to configure new service profiles, device profiles, security, vZone, firewall policies, and so on. Here I'm showing that how you can integrate a virtual manager. By the way, PNSC is deployed through an OVA template. So it's basically a virtual machine. It does not need to be in the same data center. All it needs is a management connectivity. So this PNSC that screenshot I've taken from is actually as a virtual machine deployed in VMware. And I'm integrating that PNSC to the same virtual manager, which is my vCenter management IP address. I also integrated to the first screen is showing how it is integrated with VSG, and the second screen is showing it is integrated with VSM. So once all the integration is done, then the cross communication can easily flow from one service node to the other service node. This is how you integrate from the command line of VSM, VSG, and ASA. So on PNSC, you accept them through the GUI by providing their management IP, and on these service nodes, you give the registration host IP address, which is your PNSC. So at this point, both the parties are in agreement that they'll be providing the information and they'll be getting the information from PNSC. I'm creating a tenant here, and this tenant will be given a specific VSG, which has the specific service profile. Now, the tenant name on the PNSC and VSM should match. If there is a mismatch with the tenant name, because it's a case sensitive, two tenants might become a duplicate of each other if the name is not given properly. Once the tenant is created, then the VSG, which was integrated earlier, can now be provisioned to work with this tenant. And you can define a specific device profile The purpose of device profile is that if you are having a big customer and you want to separate the tenants and the conditions for the VSG security is the configuration of the security policies on the VSG is the same, then you can just create one device profile for that specific customer and deploy it across its tenants using the same device profile. Device profile is basically what would be my DNS server, how do I get the configuration, where is the repository, all those specific common features are defined in a device profile. Here I'm showing that after my tenant is created, after I have assigned it a VSG, how do I create the zones and how do I map it to a profile, a firewall policy, which would be triggered whenever I see a traffic coming from a virtual machine getting redirected to this tenant. So here I'm showing that I've created the policies, specific policies that if it's coming from this virtual machine and going to a specific destination, then whether the traffic will be permitted or dropped, what ports are allowed, what type of traffic is allowed, and so on. So a lot of different options are now available in PNSC to granularize your traffic in the network. We have two firewalls, VSG and ASAV. They have a different purpose. VSG is a layer 2 transparent firewall that is designed to protect the traffic within the tenant, that is within the single VLAN. It is inserted between the virtual machine and the Nexus 1000V, so that any traffic that leaves the virtual machine can be subjected to filtering before it goes anywhere. Any traffic coming from that VM or any traffic going to that VM will be subjected to the VSG security before any further action can be taken. So since it's transparent in nature, there is no modifying of the traffic. It does not support NAT or routing, and it strictly operates at the layer 2 capacity. It offers capability to filter traffic on IP, protocol, VM name, and attributes, which we saw on PNSC service profile. With just like Nexus 1000V and what we discussed in last webcast, any virtual nodes can be deployed as a virtual machine on hypervisor, or it can be deployed as a plate on Nexus 1010. So that's what I'm showing here. We have two options to deploy VSG, and either of them works as per your requirement. We do provide HA between the two, between all the virtual nodes. So in case in the event one VM goes down, hosting your VSG, the other VM will continue to provide the security. And there are three adapters for every VSG VM. The first one is the service VLAN, which is the VLAN that vPath uses to transfer the traffic back and forth from the VM to the VSG. We have a management, which is for the management purposes, and then there is a separate VLAN for just high availability between the two VSG. You can deploy the VSG in two modes, just like how you can deploy VM and VSM in two modes, layer 2 and layer 3. Layer 2 works, it's simple to install, but sometimes it's difficult to troubleshoot the issues when the modules are not working properly. Layer 3 mode helps in defining and giving you flexibility to be on a different subnet rather than having everything on the same VLAN, just to eliminate further broadcast. So if it's on a layer 2 mode, then the VM during the initial negotiation will ARP for the VSG data 0 IP address as with the source of 0.0.0.0. In layer 3 mode, it will ARP using its VM kernel. From functionality and working point of view, there is no difference in either of mode. This is just from the management perspective and troubleshooting that we offer two different modes for troubleshooting. So this is a traffic flow, and it's similar to what was shown on that YouTube video. So basically, what I'm showing here is that we have a VSM with a vPath enabled, communicating with VSG, and having a PNSC working with both VSM and VSG in the background. The different colors for the VM shows the different VLANs, different tenants, and I'm having a laptop here which is sitting in the cloud and trying to send a traffic to a VM. And what happens is it first sends the initial packet. 1000V has never seen this packet. So and it will see that, okay, it's going to a VM, which is a part of my service profile, pointing it to the VSG. The vPath triggers and it sends the packet to the VSG for policy evaluation. VSG would work on it depending upon what we have defined in PNSC. Once VSG makes a decision, it will send back to the vPath with the decision. At this point, vPath will forward the traffic to the specific VM, and it will also configure your VM module with the table for this connection. So any further traffic coming from the same laptop for the same connection going to the same VM will bypass the VSG and go through the vPath. Because now the connection table has been configured on the VM, there is no further need for the VSG. So only the first packet of the flow needs to go to the VSG, and the other packets continue to flow to the same VM without the involvement of vPath or VSG at that point. Now, the VSG, what we talked about, is within the tenant. If I need security, a firewall within the tenant, within one tenant on the same VLAN, if I have my virtual machines and I need to protect them, I will use VSG. But what about two different tenants belonging to the same customer, or two VDCs, virtual data center, for the same tenant sitting on a different subnets? So different subnets or different tenants. How do I protect them? And for that, we have ASA firewall. ASA firewall will protect your traffic between the two tenants or between the two different subnets. There's a layer 3 edge firewall providing the traditional filtering capabilities between the different subnets. It can do NAT, you can configure routing, and ASA can also act as your default gateway. It can also provide you a VPN functionality. It's basically similar to north-south. So ASA is for the north-south traffic, VSG is for east-west traffic, both relying on vPath and PNSC for configuration and this functionality. Just an overview of how the VSG and ASA would be working together. So here I'm showing one tenant has this 3-tier application where web server needs to talk with the app server, which in turn talks to the database server. Now, if I want to protect any outside traffic coming directly to database server, I will use VSG. If I want to protect web server from communicating directly to the database server, I will use VSG. But if I want to protect two tenants from talking with each other, I will use ASA. Deployment model for ASA, you have inside and outside interfaces as with any traditional firewall, where inside being the most secure and the outside being subjected to any further policies. So what we do is we first create the interface configuration in ASA for outside. We create the policies for the inside interface, and then any virtual machine profiles will be created. You will have multiple of these security profiles as per your requirement. So it's a straightforward configuration. You deploy ASA as OVA or a VSP, configure it to be part of the PNSC, configure the vPath on Nexus 1000V, and then configure this on the interfaces of ASA to provide the security across the tenants. So anytime a traffic from inside comes into going to the outside, it will get triggered to this policy, and it will be subjected to the further firewall configuration as per your PNSC. Next thing I would like to talk about is cloud service router, why we need it and how it helps to resolve the issues that are coming up because of extending your applications across the cloud. So in today's cloud architecture, we are extending our data center for that customer across internet or MPLS on the branch, as well as further going to the cloud providers like Azure, AWS, or Cisco hybrid clouds. So any traffic that needs to go from branch to the cloud has to traverse through your main data center to get to that specific application. It cannot go directly through through your service provider circuit. It cannot go directly to the cloud infrastructure. It has to go through the data center because that is your terminating tunnel points for MPLS or for internet. Also, with the current architecture, it's based on VLAN, so it does not scale that much. You can only have up to 4,000 virtual private circuits sitting outside of your main branch and data center deployments. So there is a disjoint. There is no. It is more complicated without a need of a router in the cloud provider. We also have CSR 1000V available for AWS as well as Azure, so that on those private cloud providers, we do have a CSR 1000V component solving this routing issues when you extend your applications across the circuits. And there is a lack of traffic control in VPC. You cannot provide QoS, visibility, acceleration like vWAAS because there is no CSR 1000V or any routing component sitting on the cloud. So this is the solution that we are proposing with CSR 1000V. Per tenant, you can deploy a virtual CSR 1000V instance, which provides you the routing. It's a layer 3 extension. It provides you a multi-point VPN gateway, and it also can act as a VXLAN gateway. So we have VXLAN as a virtual machine, as a Nexus 9000 physical appliance, and we also have per tenant based CSR 1000V to provide VXLAN gateway. So the way it works is a branch B wants to talk with the virtual private cloud of the same customer. It does not need to go to the data center. It can directly go through the circuit on the CSR 1000V. It also helps you to terminate your MPLS. So CSR 1000V is capable to do MPLS, and it can terminate the MPLS and eliminate the dependencies on VLAN. So you don't need to implement the VLAN solution. You can use MPLS to scale your traffic from branches, data center to a cloud solution. It can also do a layer 2 over the LAN to provide you the extension of the data center across the VPCs. And it also gives you the traffic control for QoS and access in the cloud solution itself. It acts as a VPN gateway for your CSR 1000V across the circuit, across your public and private address space. It provides you different routing capabilities like EIGRP, OSPF, BGP, ISIS. It can do addressing like NAT, PAT, DHCP. It can also provide AAA and firewall services. It's MPLS gateway. You can terminate your MPLS circuits on the cloud now and giving you more visibility in the cloud rather than relying on the cloud provider to take care of it. So it gives you this extending your MPLS WAN directly into the VPC for any-to-any connectivity. Same concept, it's extending your layer 2 over the LAN. It's providing, it works on, it has a support for LIPS protocol as well to extend your data center network, irrespective of how many clouds you have in between. The same services will be now extended from your enterprise data center to the cloud provider with the help of CSR 1000V. CSR 1000V is also deployed to provide you WCCP. It can do monitoring for NetFlow, NBAR. It provides HSRP and QoS services as well. It optimizes your cloud traffic through different vWAAS, WCCP, and other monitoring tools that we have. It can be deployed as a virtual machine. It has minimum, it needs 3 interfaces, and you can scale up to, I think, 32 interfaces per virtual machine. And here there are 3 different options. I have 3 interfaces which are mapped to the 3 different uplinks. You can have 3 interfaces mapped to one single uplink, and you can have 3 interfaces, one acting as a trunk and 2 on any specific VLAN. or you can have all three on a specific VLAN as per your needs. So there is a flexibility in how it is deployed and how many interfaces you can have and how it can be mapped to the uplink. Just a pictorial view of how it shows on the vCenter. Three interfaces for the same CSR VM, all pointing to the same uplink VMNIC 0. And as I mentioned, it also acts as a CSR gateway, CSR VXLAN gateway. It directly participates in VXLAN, so you can connect your VMs to the VXLAN networks without a specialized virtual switch. You can connect, it can be a terminating point for your VXLAN and the VLAN. It provides that bridging at the virtual level with the help of CSR 1000V. So if you have routing capabilities needed at the cloud level, and you also need VXLAN, then the CSR 1000V would be the solution to go with. So a question usually comes from the customer that, okay, the vPath technology is good, but what about other services that currently Cisco is not offering? Can we leverage vPath with the 1000V for different services? And the answer is yes. And we are continuously developing the vPath architecture to add more services so that we can give the complete layer 2 to layer 7 functionality at the cloud level. And the first service that we came up with was a NetScaler load balancer provided by Citrix. It was a joint venture of Cisco and Citrix to provide that cloud level of load balancing with the help of a vPath. So we came up with a new architecture on vPath 3.0 where we can integrate physical services, virtualized services, as well as non-vPath third-party services can be now integrated through vPath. Obviously, there needs to be some changes on the offering. So Citrix did take the vPath technology and modify their NetScaler to be a part to be the part of the Cisco vPath family. There were some changes on the NetScaler. They included some of the Cisco proprietary stuff and giving you the vPath for load balancing at the virtual cloud. It's easy to deploy. Again, it can be deployed as a virtual machine or as a blade on Nexus 1110. It needs to have a specific deployment. If during the deployment, it will ask you whether you want a low performance or a high performance, and depending upon your resources, you can select either of them, and also depending upon what kind of a workload you need NetScaler to handle with. vPath is enabled by default. So this is a view of a Citrix NetScaler virtual machine. And once it's configured with the management IP, then the vPath is already turned on. You just need to tell vPath to use a specific IP address. And here we are telling it to use this management IP address to communicate with PNSC, VSM, and so on. You also need to turn on the load balancing and other services that it provides for application-centric services. And primarily, we'll use load balancing as well as the application firewall. Once the load balancing is enabled, the web servers that you want the traffic to be load balanced to, you need to give them a virtual IP address, and they need to be a part of that virtual server with the nodes defined, which are already configured on your VMware or Hyper-V. The VMs are already provisioned. They are part of a port profile, which will send the traffic to the NetScaler. And here we are configuring the load balancing for that particular application. With that, furthermore enhancements, furthermore scalability that was needed at the cloud level. So if we are trying to mimic the actual physical world in the cloud, then we need to also provide all those services. And with firewall routing and load balancing, there was also a need for visibility. Traditionally, at the switch level, at the server level, your visibility ends, because there are so many virtual machines. You don't get granular virtual machine traffic specifications. You don't get performance specifications of those virtual environment. And that's why we came up with a network analysis module for Nexus 1010, also as a virtual machine. It provides that visibility. It extends that boundary of visibility into your virtual workloads. Through the use of NetFlow, ERSpan, SPAN, and other tools, it can provide that graphical overview of how the traffic is working at the virtual level. So basically, it extends your visibility into per tenant basis. You can deploy the vNAM per tenant basis to get analysis done at the virtual level. If you are billing a customer on the performance or on the usage, then this is a handy tool to give you that visibility on the load and the application resources being used at the virtual level. We also have a WAN optimization provided at the cloud. So WAN optimization technology, wWAAS, was originally developed by Cisco to optimize your TCP-based traffic at the cloud level. And since, as we saw, with the help of CSR, you are now extending your applications, or even without the CSR, you're extending your applications across the cloud. You need a method to optimize that traffic. And for that, we came up with the vWAAS, which again integrates to Nexus 1000V using a vPath. So in the clouds where you need more optimization, you can leverage vPath on Nexus 1000V to use WAAS services. It's very similar to the physical WAAS appliances that we have, and it integrates with WCCP and other services to provide that optimization. Just a pictorial view on the left, how the WCCP vWAAS would be deployed across the clouds, and from the deployment point of view, it can be also as a virtual machine or as a VSP. You just need to be on a VLAN and vPath enabled, and it provides you that functionality of optimization. A quick overview of how these nodes come into play and what solutions they provide. This is an example where I'm having enterprise A and B extending their traffic across the cloud on the virtual infrastructure. I have tenant A and tenant B. And per tenant, I will have a CSR 1000V router and a VSG to protect the traffic within the tenant, and also have a load balancer to load balance the traffic across the virtual machines. So this is one of the examples where you can use different tools that we went over using a PNSC, Nexus 1000V, CSR, and VSG. Within the tenant, if you want to have more protection needed, then you can use a VSG for the traffic. You can have ASA, which is protecting your tenant from the cloud traffic. Any traffic coming from the cloud going to your tenant will be protected by ASA. You'll have a NetScaler to provide the load balancing, and we can also have vWAAS to do a cloud optimization. This topology I've taken from dCloud. So that's a dCloud as our Cisco offering to have hands-on practice on any of the services that Cisco has. And here in this example, it actually walks you through setting up PNSC, VSM, NetScaler, VSG from scratch. So it's a good tool to leverage. This lab was like for 2 hours. And the goal here was to use NetScaler to load balance the traffic at the web server level. And we had a workstation and database sitting on the same VLAN. And there was a need to protect the traffic from the virtual machine to the database server. And that was done with the VSG. So a configuration example of how things tied up. We create a vService, which is a vPath on the VSM. We specify the order of chaining. So the question would come up is, okay, I have ASA, I'm using VSG, I'm using NetScaler. What is the order of preference? Where should the traffic first go before it goes to the next node? And that depends upon how you want the traffic to be protected. But the most common way of doing is first you protect the traffic within your VLAN, and the first thing it should go is to the VSG. Then once the VSG gives a security clearance, then you go to the further conditioning of the traffic. If the VSG itself fails the traffic, if it's not bounded to a specific policy and it fails the compliance, then there is no need to further work on the traffic if the traffic is going to be dropped eventually. And in current mode, we support VSG to ASA and not the other way. So to chain up all your services, you configure the vService path, you specify the node, then you specify the second node, and you give the order of preference. Very similar to access list that we create with the permit and the preference value. So here, this vService path has been tied to a port profile, which is now given to a tenant, a web machine, which is your web server VM. So anytime a traffic comes to this web server, it will first go to the VSG, and it will use the ABC profile, which was created on PNSC. So VSG will work on it depending upon what ABC profile is, and after it does its conditioning and sends the traffic back, it will then go to the NetScaler. From NetScaler, the traffic will come back to the VM, get it programmed on the VM, and all other traffic will follow the same path. This is how the chaining is configured at the VSM level. All the vPath configuration, all the chaining is done at the Nexus 1000V. All the policies, all the configurations for the profile is done at the PNSC, and then it is pushed to the VSG and ASA. So with that, it's good, great. We have all the services. We know how to make them work and so on. But if I have multiple tenants, do I need to deploy this every time? And yes, I need to. But then, how do I secure the traffic? How do I make sure that I'm giving them the virtual container so that the traffic for one tenant will not spill over from the hardware point of view as well as from the virtual services point of view? So the question is there an easy way to deploy all these tools that we mentioned in one click per tenant basis? And the answer is yes. Answer is yes, because we came up with a vWAAS solution, which is Virtual Application Container Services. It's not to get confused with the Linux container like Docker. It's a container, a logical container, to have all your services in one logical bucket. So currently, what we have is we need an architect, it does a design, we identify the resources, we get the license, we install, we provision, we secure, we test. Everything is manual. There is no automated self-provision for all those services. Your VMs they are split. So you have one application, it needs a web tier application, and it needs to work with a database application and web server. And all those VMs are spread across in different hosts, and you need to specify different policies to make sure that which VM talks with which other VM, how they are segregated, how is the troubleshooting done. If you have VMs spread across and it's not in one container, how do you troubleshoot them? How do you link up all the VMs for that specific application? And it takes a lot of efforts. If you want to synchronize all this, then it takes a lot of manual efforts to bring them on the same logical setup. And that's what the solution we came up with was a specific container for your specific application. We are not tying up to a specific hardware. Don't get me wrong, container is not a physical hardware. We are talking about a logical hardware per se. I have an application, I have this VMs. They need to have security, they need to have routing, they need to have switching and they need to have NetScaler load balancing. All this with this profiles. And I provide them hardware. Hardware can be any host with Hyper-V or vCenter. With all these policies, with all this requirement, can I create a container for that application? And that's what the vWAAS is giving you. It's giving you the security, it's giving you the visibility, because it's all in the same logical container, and it is giving you automated provisioning, so that if you run out of capacity on that logical container, if you want to add more hosts, you can just go to that container and say add host and add further resources to that container. If you need more VMs with the same provisioning, with the same security, go to that container and say deploy more VMs. And they all will be part of the same tenant, same policies. So it provides you all this. It provides you Nexus 1000V, it provides you VSG, it provides you Edge Firewall, it provides you CSR, and it provides you an orchestration tool, which is UCS Director. Other services are not listed, but they are on the roadmap, such as NetScaler. We also came up with a VAAS on Hyper-V. Earlier, the first version was on VMware vCenter only. Now we support it on Hyper-V as well. So just an overview of, you have a container, you have all the services tied up as a logical container. So from troubleshooting configuration point of view, you can just go to one single management tool. For deploying more resources or removing more resources, again, you go to the one single tool. Other view of how it would look from, you can have, irrespective of what server you have, irrespective of what EXXI or Hyper-V, you have your same virtual portfolio, which is available to all the tenants in a segregated way, in the secured way. And all this happens through the use of UCS Director. So quick note on UCS Director, orchestration tool that we came out with for cloud services. It integrates with also UCS Central and UCSM, and it also integrates with the third-party tools for more programming capabilities. It also integrates with virtual managers like Hyper-V vCenter. There's a separate guide on it which explains how to deploy on the dcloud. So I would encourage to use a dcloud labs to provision and configure UCS Director. So one UCS Director will be talking to PNSC, vCenter, and VSM. Those components stay the same, and then you can keep creating containers for application or on tenant basis with the same CSR and with the specific CSR and VSG within that container. How does it scale? You can have one UCSD talking to different vCenters, which has a PNSC integrated with it, and then 1000 Vs are integrated with the PNSC, and then you keep deploying these containers across your data center network. And they can be in the same or different data centers, that does not matter. It's logically a container. It can be mixed or it can be isolated. It does not matter at that point. By default, we give three types of containers, three-tier internal, three-tier external, and a customized. So if you want more customization to the traffic coming and going out of your container, you can use a customer container where you can deploy your specific policies, zones, and zone policies. It is supported with both VLAN and VXLAN, and it decouples your workloads from network topologies. So it's basically, you can say it's a modified version of NFV. It gives you you don't need to have any visibility in what type of hardware and hypervisor you have. Quick steps on how to deploy it, and this is coming from cisco.com/go/VAAS. You have a UCS Director already configured, assuming that you apply a patch so that it supports Cisco VAAS. You install the VAAS license, you upload the VAAS package, you verify the installation of VAAS, and then you install PNSC, you install Nexus 1000V. You add the host to it, which is coming from that virtual manager, which could be Hyper-V or vCenter. A three-tier application internal access. It says internal access because it does not have, by default, any provision to have outside traffic hitting directly your database tier. Any outside traffic from upstream comes to the CSRV, goes to the web tier, and through the VSG, it works from web tier to app tier to database. you don't have direct access to any of the tiers except the web tier. With the external access, yes, we give this flexibility that you can have your outside traffic hitting directly any of the 3 tiers. Not recommended, but it is there as a default option for external access. And for customized, you can freely create any policies that you want, how you want the tiers to be handled from outside and internal traffic. We do still provide CSR and VSG to make those configuration changes. Features, we support HSRP, ERSPAN, static NAT, EIGRP. All those features that were available through individual components are available in VAX as well. The traffic walkthrough for internal, first packet would come from a web VM which is sitting outside. It will hit the VSG. VSG will permit depending upon the policies, and then the vPath on the VM is programmed. The packet then goes to the gateway, and from gateway, it goes down towards the specific VM. And all other packets are then routed and switched in the same way as per the original vPath programming on the VM. Similarly, a traffic from outside to the inside on external container, here I'm sending the traffic directly to the app VM, which an internal access is not possible. So any traffic coming from outside to inside with the VSG and CSR, it follows this path where it goes to the CSR 1000V, it does the NAT. If there is a NAT translation already configured, then it goes to the VM, it's redirected to the VSG first, and then from the VSG, depending upon the programming, the traffic finally reaches to the app VM, and all of the traffic follows the same model once the vPath is programmed. So with that said, I would like to conclude today's webcast. We talked about hypervisors in the first webcast. We talked about how we deployed on the cloud with the help of different vPath services. And in the next webcast, we'll talk about the hybrid cloud, the inter-cloud fabric that Cisco came up with, and also how this architecture is used across different applications, such as AVS, which is a part of our Cisco ACI solution, where we can integrate APIC controller directly to the AVS switch to provide the same functionality that ACI provides on physical hardware. So we are extending the same technology and leveraging it across different clouds, different platforms. Thank you, and you can ask me any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Vishal. Great presentation. I want to thank everyone for participating in the event polling as well. And now we're going to answer some of the questions our viewers have submitted today. If you can't stay with us for the Q&A, please be sure to click on the evaluation link provided in the chat to let us know how this session met your business needs and expectations. Also, if there's any questions that need further follow-up on the Q&A, remember that Vishal is doing an Ask the Expert event on the community, and that is a great opportunity to post questions that you need further follow-up on. All right, the first question here is there high availability for PNSC?
Currently, we don't have high availability for PNSC, but in any event, if the PNSC goes down, it's a part of the management, it's not part of the data plane, so all the policies which were configured and defined will continue to work in the event if the PNSC is not available.
Okay, and the next question is another question on PNSC, and it has to do with the licensing. So how is PNSC licensed?
PNSC is, it's actually a free, you don't need to purchase a separate license. If you have purchased VSG or ASA or even Nexus 1000V advanced license, you don't need to have a specific license for PNSC.
Okay. And this next one, can OTV be set up in CSR 1KV to extend L2 from our DC to the cloud VPC? So feel free to elaborate on that.
Okay, so OTV, from OTV control plane perspective, yes, you can use CSR 1000V, but remember CSR 1000V is on iOS. It's not an NXOS based platform. So any specific NXOS traffic or NXOS configuration would not be available on CSR. But if you're talking about using CSR as a multicast router to support OTV, then that is going to work.
And another question on PNSC here. Does PNSC integrate with other prime modules, example, infrastructure?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question again?
Sure. Does PNSC integrate with other prime modules? An example of that would be infrastructure. I think they're talking about prime infrastructure.
Prime infrastructure. So PNSC does integrate with other components, including the one that we mentioned, like third-party tools as well as the Cisco provided components.
Okay. And CSR is not a distributed router like VMware NSX. I think that was a question. Is it not a distributed router like VMware NSX?
It is a CSRV is distributed router, meaning you need to have a specific router per tenant. So CSR 1000V is specific to isolate and provide routing to a specific tenant. So yes, it's not a distributed router because the purpose of CSRV is not to mix the traffic across. It does provide a VRF functionality, so you can have a separation of the VRF using a virtual routing and forwarding table, but it's not a distributed router. And the reason for that is it is meant to separate the tenants and customers and not to have a common routing across all the tenants.
Thank you. The next question, does Cisco 1000V provide QoS?
Yes, it does provide QoS. There is a configuration guide on 1000V product page where you can do the QoS, DHCP markings, and further conditioning like cloud class-based queuing, LLQs, and all that. Everything that is supported on Nexus 5000 QoS is supported on Nexus 1000V, except the hardware-specific stuff.
And is VACS for SP and or enterprise and or SMB customers?
It is for all of them.
All of them, okay. This comes to a question, again, about licensing, but it has to deal with VACS. So can you give us a VACS license overview?
Sure. The VAX license, the components of VAX are UCS Director, 1000V, CSR 1000V, VSGP, and SC. So once you apply a license for VAX, all those components are then automatically licensed. So in order to use VAX, you must upgrade the VAX license first on the Director, and the following license, following components such as 1000V, VSG, CSRP, and SC would be licensed by installing VAX license.
And another follow-up question on VAX. What are ideal applications that would justify VAX?
Any application which is like 3-tier application would be a classic example of where you would use VAX. But let's not limit it to application. The whole purpose of having VAX is to provide you a virtualized container so that at the time for expanding your needs or for troubleshooting and for logical mapping, for having a streamlined security and routing per tenant, you can use a VAX solution. So it could be one application, it could be multi-tiered application. Application is not the focus here. The focus is on providing you that visibility and control rather than having your VM spread across a large virtual host. And you need to go and make sure every VMs are secured in a proper way rather than put them in one basket, which is again a logical basket, so that you can provide the same conditions and security to it.
Okay, another question here on VAX. A lot of questions on that. Can VAX do VXLAN?
Yes, VAX supports 2 segments, which is a VLAN as well as VXLAN.
Thank you. And how does Cisco Prime vNAM gather information from the network?
vNAM has a GUI where you can see all the analysis, and the way it collects the information from network is through SPAN, ER-SPAN, or net flow data export from network devices. What it will do is from this mechanism, it will extract the details, do the performance analytics, and provide it in a GUI with the different reports on what traffic and what performance it has seen from the gathered information.
Thank you. And something on CSR 1000V. What networking problems does the CSR 1000V address?
What networking problems? So networking problems such as what the slide that I showed on with the animation, that branch-to-branch traffic needs to go to the data center if your cloud environment does not have a routing piece in it, or you need to rely on a cloud provider for routing all those capabilities, and that is charged, that is not free. So it's better to have your own router sitting over there so that any data center branch traffic to the cloud environment, you can terminate your MPLS, your LITs, and other VPN gateway and other layer 3 protocols directly to the router rather than sending the traffic back to the data center or relying on cloud service router.
Here's a follow-up question on Cisco CSR 1000V. Which virtualization platforms can the Cisco CSR 1000V run on?
It runs on all the major players like VMware EXXI, Citrix, XenServer, KVM with Red Hat, KVM with Ubuntu, Hyper-V, and we also have AMI image for Amazon, and we are also going to come up with Azure image for the Azure cloud services. Okay, and this is related to that particular question you just answered. What minimum resources does the CSR 1000V need from the underlying server? Can it be deployed on Nexus 1110? Currently, it cannot be deployed on a 1110, but it needs specific services which is listed on the config guide, such as let me think. It needs a specific CPU and memory, and if those such as for you need up to 8 virtual CPUs, you need up to 16 gig of maximum. So 1 to 8 virtual CPUs, 2.5 to 16 gig of memory, 8 gig of disk space, and you need 2 or more virtual network interfaces to support or to the maximum allowed by the hypervisor. So depending upon what you need and how much intensive it's going to be used, you can scale these parameters to support more traffic. Thank you. And getting back to VACs, which hypervisors VACs can be deployed on? So it's currently supported on VMware, VMware vCenter, and VMware EXXI hypervisor, as well as Microsoft Hyper-V with SCVMM. So those are the 2 major platforms where VACs can be deployed on. Okay. And can a Citrix NetScaler be used to load balance both using vPath and traditional load balancing at the same time? Can NetScaler be used for so you won't need to use both at the same time. You can use NetScaler for traffic within your cloud, within your tenant, and that is meant for the virtual workloads. If you have that, then you can relieve your NetScaler load balancer, physical load balancer from that kind of a traffic. Because if you're using a physical load balancer for load balancing virtual workloads, then imagine all your traffic has to traverse through the server, through the layer 2 switching, probably a router, and get back down just to provide a load balancing service. So you can use it, but it's not justifiable from traffic optimization point of view. Rather, you would have a virtual service of NetScaler so that the traffic stays within or with the limited moving around your data center and be all in maybe a same hypervisor or cross hypervisor, but keeping the traffic within the virtual environment and not going out just to have that service from the physical node. Okay, this is touching on the same subject.
So can you elaborate a little bit on this? What is the load balancer strategy for VAX?
Okay, so we are going to, it's currently we don't have that functionality, but it's on our roadmap. We are going to support both F5 load balancer as well as the NetScaler. I think the NetScaler would be the first one to be supported, and following with the F5 to provide load balancing within the VAX container.
Thank you. And what licenses does a customer need to have to use Cisco Prime Network Services Controller?
We don't need any license to PNSC. If we have a VSG, ASA, or 1000V license, then PNSC is basically free to use. You don't need to have a specific license. Even in VAX, if you are installing VAX, then you don't need to have PNSC license.
Okay. And another question back onto the CSR 1000V. Is CSR 1000V similar to the Cisco ASR 1000 series or Cisco ISR products, or those can be replaced?
No. They have a specific feature, and CSR is meant for the cloud, on the cloud platform. So if you have a cloud services, that's where you need to have a CSR. Now, ASR is a big router. You need it for data center. And ISR is a smaller scale of that you need on the branch. Those are physical services. The whole point of having CSR is to give you that functionality to talk from these ASR and ISR to a routing component so that they can have the layer 3 extended all the way in the cloud. And that's where you need CSR. So CSR is a virtual appliance meant for the cloud and low-level traffic in the cloud services. And ASR and ISR are meant for data center and branch. So
and a follow-up question on that regarding the Cisco iOS software features. What's supported on CSR 1000V?
From iOS, okay. So almost all the routing features that we need or that we use on day-to-day basis are supported. VPN, MPLS, OSPF, EIGRP, OTV, MPLS, LISP, QoS, VXLAN, you name it. We have almost all the features that you would need or that is available on a physical router.
And a question on technical changes with regards to the new Cisco Prime Network Services Controller. What technical changes have there been?
On PNSC, so it was a modified version of vNMC, so not much has changed, except we changed the GUI portion of it to include more options. We also revised the architecture so that it can support Hyper-V now. It also support third-party tools which were not there when vNMC was out. So to have all those specific components to support the ever-growing services, we had to revise our PNSC architecture, and we made it more GUI-based and more options were included on the PNSC. But nothing technical or major changes that you need to rerun or revamp on the technology for PNSC. It's the same, it's just that we added more functionality to it.
Thank you. And we have a couple more questions, time for a few more questions. What integration mechanisms does Cisco Prime vNAM offer?
Sorry, can you please repeat that question?
Sure. What integration mechanisms does Cisco Prime vNAM offer?
So vNAM offers XML API, so XML as well as the REST API to allow external applications to configure the various capabilities on vNAM. So not only you can use your Cisco-based configuration, but with the help of REST and XML, you can use external application. Third-party tools can also configure various capabilities in vNAM. So it's open for configuration from third-party as well as Cisco-specific configuration.
Okay. And on our last question here, what features VSG offers?
So VSG offers all the features that you want to have in the transparent layer 2 only firewall. It provides you with With the VM-to-VM security, it provides you with the dual path architecture. That is, it takes part in the architecture when the vPath first sends the new packet to it on a traffic which is never seen. It applies the policy, send it back, and then it is no longer in the path of the traffic. It provides you high availability. It provides you non-disruptive administration. It supports flexible virtualized data center, and it also provides a Cisco proprietary trustsec security. So all those are the features but primarily what we need is a VM-to-VM security on the same VLAN, and that is only provided by VSG.
Thank you very much, and that's going to conclude the Q&A portion of today's event. I also want to mention that the video that we were going to show earlier in the presentation will be available, that link for download within the presentation. So you can go to the link that they posted in the chat window where this presentation will be posted, and then you can get the link to that video and watch it. So if you haven't already logged into the Cisco support community recently, we encourage you to do so. And we have a brand new look and feel, increased options and features, so log in and start sharing today. And just to note, our presence in social media keeps expanding, so we encourage you to visit the community and join us through our social media channels. And we continue to expand our reach in many different languages, and perhaps we have one already available in a language of your choice. So these are not simply translated sites. They are active, standalone sites in native languages. And we have them in Spanish, Portuguese, Japanese, Russian, and Chinese. Looking for more information on IT and technical training, log into the Cisco Learning Network and take advantage of the technical webinars that they have to offer. Go to the link provided in the chat to learn more. And before signing off today, we hope you'll take a moment to complete your evaluation of today's session. This will help us address your business needs and interests in the future, and we do take your feedback into consideration. We actually took your feedback into consideration for this new series that we launched. So go ahead and make sure to fill that out. And this concludes our session today. I want to thank Vishal for sharing his expertise with us today. I also want to thank expert Gunjan for answering your technical questions. I want to thank you all for attending, and have a great day, and we'll see you on the Cisco support community.